Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another one of our webinars. It's a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully you'll get some great takeaways from this. You'll find the event really interesting. And yeah, hopefully, like I say, you get a lot from this. So just before we get started, a few kind of housekeeping rules. Everyone should already be on mute, but if you aren't already, just please double check your little microphone icon there just to make sure that we don't get any noise or pickup. If you do have any questions, and I hope that you do, please feel free to add those. There should be a little Q&A function in the chat box. If not, just drop them in anywhere you can, and we'll make sure to come to those towards the end. After this presentation, I'll email everybody that signed up. You'll get a copy of the webinar itself, the presentations, as well as answers to those questions. And we'll also follow up with a short questionnaire just to get some feedback on the webinar, how you thought it went, future topics you'd like us to discuss, and ways in which we can improve moving forwards. So I'll take now a moment to introduce today's speaker. Now, you may have noticed that there is only one when we previously mentioned that there was going to be two. Unfortunately, Kieran is unwell and is unable to join us, but you can rest assured that we are in a safe pair of hands with Sam, a social media expert with experience working with some of the most notable brands in the world. John Lewis, New Look, Experian. She has a wealth of knowledge within organic, social, and creative, and she's passionate about telling those stories that are commercially impactful, creatively inspiring, and culturally relevant. No doubt you will take a lot away from this webinar. It will be part of a series focused on the biggest organic social media challenges. This part here will look at some of the state of play of social media, organic social media, where it's going, some of the challenges, and a few tips on how you can grow your own organic presence. The following subsequent webinars as part of the series will delve deeper into those tips and tricks and really give you that guiding hand on how you can really make the most of organic social. So do keep checking back, stay tuned, subscribe to the emails to make sure you don't miss out on those subsequent webinars. The focus of today's session, understanding the opportunity that organic social media can have for your business and providing you with 7 tips to take away and implement to improve your own activity 2023 and beyond. And with that said, I will hand over to Sam to present your webinar.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much, Rob, for the lovely intro. So what I wanted to speak to you this morning about is something that comes up quite often and has, I suppose, the past several really years, if you have worked within the social media and digital marketing industry. And that is organic social media dead? Is it something as a business or a brand we should still be investing in? And that's something that I want to answer today, because every time I do see someone put this statement out there, I think, well, that's not really 100% accurate. And I don't think it is true. But before we discuss the quote unquote death of social media, I think it's really important that we understand what social media looks like, both for this year in 2022 and what potentially is in store for us in 2023. So first and foremost, what actually is organic social media? So organic social is the free content that any user, including a business or brand, can put out on their feeds. So that's the photos, the videos, the lovely memes, and the stories. That is essential organic social media, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. What we're not necessarily going to touch on is paid social media. So in terms of where we stand in 2022, social media itself is still growing. And as DE is a global agency, we do look at global stats, but I will give you some UK specific ones for those who are joining in the UK this morning. So in 2022, social media usage increased by 10%. There is now 4.62 billion users on social media channels in the world. And what that translates to is the average user is spending around 2 hours, 2.5 hours a day on social media channels. So this usage is up by 1% year on year, so it's continuing to grow. And to help give context to when I say the average user spends 2.5 hours on social media, the average user actually spends about 6 hours on the internet per day. So social media takes around 34% of their online consumption up. What's specifically interesting for the UK audience is actually, in terms of the percentage of the population that is on social media, it's 84% of those technically 13 years old and over, although I'm sure there's probably some pesky under 13s on there. And for anyone on our US market as well, that's also 80%. So it is still got headroom. Social media still can grow in these markets, but it's also got a huge penetration amongst the current marketplace. But actually, us as consumers and as users, why we use social media has not changed. So fundamentally, 45% of users still use social media to follow friends and family. And if you're a little bit like me, a bit long in the tooth maybe, you will remember why social media started in the first place. And that was a connection tool for your friends and your family. And that is still very much the case. This is now closely followed by pop culture, with people liking to follow celebrities, TV channels, and personalities. And the important thing for us to understand as brands and businesses is around 23% of those actually use social media to follow us as a brand or business. So whilst it's not within the kind of top sphere, people still use social media to engage with us. And what's interesting now is people are on more social media channels than ever before. So according to the Hootsuite and We Are Social annual digital report for October 2023, the average internet user now has 7.5 social media accounts. And one of the really interesting things about this is that there is a huge overlap in the amount of users across what you would consider the big channels. So your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Pinterests, your YouTubes, your TikToks, etc. In fact, to give a specific kind of number to it, there's less than 0.6 users who are single or on a single platform. And where you do tend to see a bit of disparity is between that slightly older platform of maybe Facebook with newer platforms like TikTok. But the real kind of takeaway piece from this is pretty much as a user of social media, they're going to be on the majority big platforms. But what has changed? So those things have stayed the same. What has changed? Well, the first thing is we are reaching channel maturity. Facebook itself really only came about in kind of 2004, and as a marketing channel only really started to ramp up from about 2010 really. So your big channels like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, they've really been active for 10 and 15 years now. What this has meant is, as illustrated by my stats before, is there is a huge number of users on those channels now. And because of that, there is naturally a huge amount of content being shared. And so it is no surprise that these platforms have really evolved and created these algorithms that we have to work in, because they are essentially evolving to meet the changing needs of the users. And this is actually one of the most influencing factors in organic performance decline year on year, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. What's also changed as well is Gen Z have entered the chat. I'm not a massive fan of grouping target markets by their generational tags, but for this purpose, I'm going to be quite broad. The reason why Gen Z is particularly interesting when we look at the landscape of social media now is they are probably the first truly native generation. So unlike the millennials, where there was a lovely period before social media came in that we knew what outside looked like, these are the Gen Zs that they have grown up with mobile devices. And now they're at a point where they have increased purchasing and buyer power. And what's really important is the way that they look at social media and how it plays a part in their lives like every generation, is different to those that have come before it. Again, generalizing as quite a group, they are much more skeptical of brands' activity because they've grown up with it. They know all the tricks and tips of the trade. And therefore, they hold us as brands and businesses much more accountable for the type and the quality of content that we put out. But they are a generation that do reward brands and businesses more substantially when we do get it right. Now, what's also happened within the past couple of years is there's no surprise that there's been a shift in overall consumer knowledge, becoming a much more knowledgeable and a much more aware consumer. And in our previous webinar, which you can go and watch back on YouTube, we discussed how, as a consumer, they're holding businesses and their impact on the environment and social issues much more higher up in the decision-making process than they ever did 5-7 years ago. And this is fundamentally reflected in social media as well. So 7 in 10 consumers specifically use social media as a way to connect with brands on their environmental and their social issues, or overall their CSR policies. And you may think, oh, Sam, connection, that's a bit of a fluffy metric to throw out there. Well, again, in our last webinar, we did discuss why connecting with a consumer on these key issues really actually has a commercial impact for your business. So we know here, for example, that if a consumer is more likely to feel connected to your business, they're more likely to buy you over a competitor, more likely recommend you to a friend, much more increased loyalty, and overall, bottom line, are willing to spend more money with you. And one of the other interesting things that has changed specifically over the kind of last 2 years is really where we spend our time online from a social media perspective. So this wee graph here illustrates the time spent online for each platform. And that is personally how I determine a platform's popularity. I don't necessarily look at the volume of users, because ultimately, if you start comparing Facebook, where there will be a lot of bots, etc., versus newer platforms, there's going to be disparity and it's not going to give you the full context. But actually looking at where people are spending time, I think it gives you a much more better view on where channel popularity sits. So interestingly, YouTube is top. This is where us as a user is spending the most time, 23 hours a month cumulatively. And what's really interesting for the UK market as well is YouTube specifically outperforms our traditional TV channels for viewership for the 18 to 35-year-olds as well. And I suppose the real big thing to call out here is TikTok is now on parity with Facebook at 19.6 hours a month. And I think that's an important kind of thing to keep in mind as we discuss further. But ultimately, whilst why we're on social media has not changed, the way we consume content has dramatically shifted, and really so in the past 2 years. We very much have moved away from what would be a static experience, where it's a lot more kind of images being posted out, etc. And we've gone to a much more rich, bold, interactive, multimedia creator experience. And that is reflected in the type of content that the platforms are wanting us to push out, as well as the times that are engaging our audience. And it's also important to note that more now than ever, social media users want a connection and they want a two-way conversation with brands. So why is this important for businesses to know this as they move forward into 2023? It's important, really. I think we're all aware, but sometimes, and I can appreciate it, particularly for businesses and brands, that the way that you've been doing things and you're into a nice little groove, you're probably continuing to do. But fundamentally with social media and the way that it evolves, that if your approach does not consistently reflect the shifts in the way that people are consuming on those platforms, well, as my good friend Steve Austin is showing here, you are getting your back pinned flat to the mat and you are down for the 3 count. It is so incredibly important that we are aware and we acknowledge the changes and the way that people are consuming, because ultimately our social media activity needs to reflect that. So if your fundamental activity is still posting out images with a really nice commercial piece of copy attached to it, I don't think you're going to be seeing the performance that you are or that you want to do. And that is not necessarily because the platforms are penalizing you. That is because, quite frankly, your content is boring, and that is not what people want to be seeing on the channel anymore. So I do think that's probably a nice way that leads us into a nice segue to talk about the elephant in the room. And before I go kind of giving recommendations on how to improve your organic social media, we're all here today to go, actually, well, isn't organic social media dead? So why should we be investing in it anyway? So I'm absolutely not denying that there's a decrease in reach and engagement across Meta platforms specifically. And Meta platforms are, of course, your Facebook and your Instagrams, and to a lesser extent, WhatsApp. But this should be no surprise. So at the start of this, I talked through how social media platforms are growing at a rapid pace, have a huge amount of the population, 84% in the UK are now on them. And that fundamentally means that there's a huge amount of content on that platform. And there's more social media platforms than there ever were. So again, back in your 2014s, you were probably only really competing with your Facebook and Twitter. But now, an average user is on 7 to 8 different platforms. So I can understand why Meta is putting algorithm changes in place, because ultimately they want to increase users' time on their platform. And how do they do that? Well, they've got to make sure the best content goes through to the feed. Now, I emphasize try here with Meta because there are flaws. I'm not going to dwell on it. It's not the time for it. But I do realize it's not 100% perfect, and there is a lot that they can improve on here. But Meta in particular have been incredibly open, and have been for years, on the changes in the algorithm that they're making. And they've been incredibly open with the fact that they will naturally favor friends and family content. Because again, relating back to the start, this is the fundamental reason why people are on social media. Second to that is much more around the entertaining and informative content. That's what they're naturally going to push out. So again, they're being really open to us as businesses. And rather than, I suppose, I've seen it as a downside in terms of, oh, Meta have taken away my organic reach. Oh, damn it, don't I hate them? I choose to see that in a different way. I choose to see the social media platforms that are tweaking their algorithms as a challenge to me as an organic social media creative to improve my activity. I have got to make my activity worthy of being in someone's feed. That's the only way that I can really make organic social media work for me. So ultimately, is organic social media dead? So probably kind of alluded to, I think the answer is no, but it has changed and developed as a business. And ultimately, have we as businesses evolved alongside it? So there is a large volume of brands and businesses that still look at social media and organic social media as an advertising channel. And when the platform was less competitive for space and their content was like that, they were likely going to be having a much higher performance. So I can also appreciate as well, as these changes have taken place, what you were probably working on maybe several years ago as example, as a type of strategy, is not working anymore. Social media, fundamentally, and organic social media is not a channel where you can get by the skin of your teeth anymore or faking it. There is a huge amount of tremendous value in this platform for businesses, but probably the biggest thing that I would want to really emphasize as part of this webinar is looking at social media as the channel that it is and developing activity and content for the channel that it is. Social means social. And I think probably along the way of as all of us getting onto these social media channels, we've maybe slightly forgotten that and looked at it a bit more like a traditional one-way marketing channel. So I still fundamentally believe organic social media is powerful, and I want to put forward my argument. So social's influence on purchase making decisions is still incredibly high. It drives trust, it inspires purchase. And one of the big things that I personally love about social media, and it's one of the reasons why I chose this as a career, I suppose, is it is a unique platform and chance for a brand and business to have a unique two-way conversation en masse with your customers. And this kind of goes back to my point around social is social, and I think how we've maybe slightly lost our way a little bit with that. But if you think about it, what other digital marketing channel is there out there where you can exert this type of trust and purchase influence, but also have that two-way conversation? So unless I'm going to stand outside on the street wearing a sandwich board where I can talk to people, where else can I really gain insights into what my consumers are liking, what they're not liking, and get the chance to ask them about it as well? Ultimately, organic social media is an incredibly important part of your marketing mix. And the reason why I also say this as well is that the customer journey is far from linear. I think we all know this now, that it is incredibly complex. No one goes from seeing a social media post to immediately purchasing, nor do they see a TV ad, for example, and go to immediately purchase. There are a huge amount of touch points in play, and it's incredibly important for us as a brand and business to be essentially where our customer is online. But what I would say as well is sometimes as marketeers, we sometimes do get a little bit too focused on the bottom of the funnel. I get it. Short-term wins are brilliant, and they're absolutely incredible value to that. But what we do need to keep in mind is that we do need to build demand for tomorrow, especially as we all focus much more on direct action marketing. It is going to essentially be a slight race to the bottom of the funnel. So organic social media is a great way to build demand for tomorrow, all through the ways that I've just kind of previously mentioned. It's a great solution for that. So why organic social media still? It's great for brand discovery, building your brand equity, giving competitive advantage, and also social proof. So hopefully I've put forward a little bit more of a compelling argument to say why you should still continue to invest in organic social media marketing. But where do we go in 2023? So what I like to do with any sort of webinar or talk I ever give is I really want to have actionable takeaways that people can implement. And what I don't want to do is come here and basically say, yep, the landscape has changed and you need to be investing in AR, VR, get onto the metaverse, guys. Because realistically, there's a couple of things. If you're a smaller brand or business, you're likely either going to have one person running social media, or it's going to be a remit of a broader marketing manager. And saying this is great if you've got a 5-10 person social media team, but it's not really realistic. And I can also appreciate that when you're looking at organic social media marketing, there is so much information out there that fundamentally sometimes it can be very overwhelming and you can't see the forest for the trees. So really, the fundamentals haven't changed in social. You still need to have an incredibly clear objective. You need to know what exactly you want your audience to be doing when you post. That hasn't changed. Neither has knowing who your audience is. That's still incredibly important. But as again, I've kind of mentioned, it's very much around social first content. And that's probably one of the key takeaways or key recommendations I'm going to go to next. The optimized implementation hasn't changed. No point posting organically when you know that, for example, there is a really big sporting occasion coming up in a month or so. One thing I think that has slightly been lost a little bit is the art and appreciation of an incredibly good community manager. And so again, another thing I'm going to talk on in terms of actionable takeaways is really around community building and outreach. And another big thing is measure and learn. Again, hasn't really changed in terms of the fundamentals, but it's something that, again, I think sometimes gets a little bit lost when we get too busy with our day-to-day job. As you've seen, social media does consistently change, and the algorithms are consistently tweaking and, moving the goalposts. So I very, very strongly encourage any brand or business that I work with and my team, myself, that we have a test and learn approach. Consistently look back and understand what's worked, what's not worked. Test in elements to understand what's worked and what's not worked. I can't sit here and tell you what's the best time to post on LinkedIn, as an example, because your community is your community. And you only get that through your testing and learning and the data and the insights that you have. So, huge implore for me as a data-driven creative, make sure that that is fundamentally in your organic social media activity. But now specifically on to ways I suppose I can try and help move and put actionable things for you. So I appreciate one of the biggest challenges for social media managers or people working in social media is realistically finding the time for everything. And probably as you've sat here and listened to me go, yeah, it's a multimedia experience, guys. The kind of collateral that maybe you were putting out is not going to cut it anymore. You're probably thinking, well, heck, where am I going to find the time to do any of this? Especially as we know, creating fresh and meaningful content is incredibly important. And we also know that because users are on so many social media channels now, unique content per platform is key. But I've worked in-house as well, and I know how incredibly challenging it is. So I suppose here's my biggest recommendation. Your content calendar should probably be the last step in the planning that you do. I think most brands or businesses typically work to a monthly or bi-weekly content calendar. I mean, hell, I've even done weekly content calendars before. And what this is ultimately doing is it's restricting your ability to develop social first content, not only in the creative ideas that you do, but of course the production of it. So let's park the content calendar and let's look at a bit more of a holistic approach. So this is something that we do at DE and would be my recommendation for anyone. It's a little bit more intensive at the start, but I promise it makes things a lot more easier month to month and will ultimately be able or allow you to be able to deliver better content, which in turn increase your performance. So the first thing I will say is lay down for the quarter. Now, I can appreciate with every brand or business, this might be slightly different. For some industries, you could actually probably lay down for a year, for example, the financial industry. Whereas if you're a bit more in a fast-paced industry, for example, like fast fashion, you probably can't be adapting to trends on a quarterly basis. So whatever works best for your industry, all you need to do is just per month write down quite simply what are the key things or key points for that month. So have you got a product launch coming up? Is it a key day? Have you got International Women's Day? Have you got Christmas coming up? It really needs to be just very, very top level. And the idea is that you can do this over a period of time. What's really interesting is there's a lot of brands and businesses that I work with still who don't actually have a marketing calendar in place. And actually a lay down for the quarter is just a bit of a fancy name that I've got for a marketing calendar. So I really do implore, it's incredibly important to at least know kind of where you're heading. The other thing to do is, one of, I suppose, the hindrances of using a content calendar is you're kind of having to think up with content on the spot. So the important thing is to build a content engine. So fundamentally what this is just a wealth of different ideas that you can tap into for that specific kind of month. So again, if you know what your quarter is looking like, build your content engine, spend half a day, for example, just putting out loads of different ideas. I'll show you an example of what that process could look like in a second. But this is fundamentally the thing that's going to drive you forward and allows you to constantly top it up as and when you have the time. But what it's stopping you doing is every month, every week, as an example, having to think of something completely new. Then go into your production, and then think about your content calendar. And of course, review, measure, do the process again. But when you're thinking about your content, remember it's social media. So the more you talk about yourself and why you're great, the less people will care. So this comes back to the statement of, I think a lot of us tend to think of organic social media as an ad channel, and it's not, it's social media. So a couple of top tips is show all the cool ways and things that you can do with your product or your service. How can it improve your customer or your client's life? What pain points does it involve? Advise them, entertain them, just don't sell to them. You have direct call to action, direct action channels specifically for that, for the more bottom of the funnel. This is all about your brand building, driving loyalty, inspiring purchase. I made this triangle, about 6 years ago now, and I get it out for every single presentation that I ever do. But it stood the test of time. Fundamentally, every single piece of content that we're putting out of social should do one of these things. It should entertain, it should inform, it should challenge, it should solve problems, it should inspire, it should educate. It should never just be going out on your social media channel just because. Again, I completely realize sometimes it's really, really hard to think of ideas. And this is where I suppose the wonders of digital marketing come in. There are loads of different different channels that we can use to help essentially mine data and mine our customers' data. Again, having worked in-house, sometimes as brands and businesses can live in our own echo chambers. And what we think our customers will find interesting and inspiring isn't maybe quite the case. So let's take bias opinion out and let's use data and insight to inform the content that we want to put forward. Probably my biggest, top tip is, if you're lucky enough to have them, go and make friends with your paid specialists and your SEO specialists and your digital marketing manager, because they will have access to loads of great insight to help funnel your content plans. And these are just some of the tools that we use when we're looking. So Pinterest Trends, Google Trends, Ahrefs, Google Analytics, BuzzSumo, Answer the Public. And probably one that's maybe not recommended so much, but is probably the biggest one, is Reddit. Reddit is a bit of an unfiltered place to really get an idea on what your customer is talking about. No one is afraid to ask a dumb question in Reddit. So you are really going to get an insight into what pain points are currently there for your target market. So apologies, this is not my prettiest slide I've ever done. But what I really want to illustrate is the data mining that we've done at DE. So this is an example for a client for ours where we've looked at both search queries. So what are the questions people are actively trying to find, as well as Reddit? What are people talking about when it comes to this subject? So what we've done here is really mine our data. It took a couple of hours to do it, pulled it all together, and then I've built my content engine out of it. This is a Miro board, it's personally what I use. And as you can see here, we've used that data and we've just chucked in loads of different ideas. This is a Miro tool or Miro board that we can then dip in and out of when we need it, when we're building our content calendar. But this, for example, is a really great way that if it's just you, or if you have a team where you can consistently kind of top it up. What's really good as well for this, and what I'd recommend, is that if you have other channels like your SEO content team, your PR team, all use the same content engine, because you're all going to be researching around the same topics and probably developing very, very similar content. So please, please, please don't get siloed or think that if you're a social media manager, you're on your own here. Break away the walls and work with the other teams to help find content and to help plan. And then fundamentally what that's done is then helped inform the great content that we produced. Rob, I'm going to ask you to play just a quick snippet of each, if that's okay.
Girl, no, to the no, no, no. Yeah, to the no. Yeah, to the no. To the no, no, no. Listen. Sister Anna, Sister Ruth, make sure that everybody get a seat. Come on, y'all. Sister Lily may go back in the kitchen because I'm ready to get through and need to eat.
Not known what a menstrual cup was. So what we did is take that, and of course we want to make it entertaining and informative. So we asked people who we definitely know wouldn't know what a menstrual cup is to tell us what they think it is. And the next one. And again, that's just a really good example of where we found data around people necessarily feeling a bit trepidatious, I don't know if that's the right word, on what type of period product to wear. So we're just encouraging them, again, for an entertaining, informative way, that there's no reason why you shouldn't be using one over the other. And what's important is, as we all know, day to day, these things can sometimes get away from yourselves. So QC yourself. This is probably one of my greatest tools that I use, is that every single piece of content and every single piece of post has to tick each one of these elements on the line. So who is the audience that it's speaking to? What key pillar does it relate to? Does it align with our overriding strategy? The objective, the social sense check. So is it social? And is it something fundamentally that our customers want to hear? If your piece of content is not ticking at least one of those boxes on each line, you should not be putting it out on social media. So hold yourself accountable and use this tool to help better sense check that you're on the right track with your activity. And I suppose another tip is, it is okay, you can loosen your tie. You don't have to be producing top-notch, grade A, Oscar-worthy productions to have a multimedia experience. Rob, are you all right to play the Marks and Spencers?
Berries and cream, berries and cream. I'm a little lad who loves berries and cream. Up the octave, go for it. Berries and cream, berries and cream. I'm a little lad who loves berries and cream.
Thank you, Rob. Obviously, Marks and Spencers, an incredibly well-known brand. But as you can see here, it's just a piece of content that is shot on your phone. And that's one of probably the key things around when we talk about a multimedia experience, is that as consumers of social media platforms, we are much more likely to pay attention to what you would call native content. So something that it feels part and is made for that platform. If you're trying to put an ad type piece of content as your organic activity, it's not going to get as enough traction as something like this. So this is really just, I suppose, to give you guys a bit of confidence that even the biggest brands aren't spending the hugest production budgets in creating really good social first content. And then I suppose one of my final tips is around the community side. Again, I think what's may have been lost as we kind of gone through social media marketing maturity is the real importance, as I said before, of the community manager, and just essentially the community side of it. Social is social. It's a two-way platform, so why not take advantage of it? But I can appreciate that's also quite daunting. So top tip, draw up a list of 20 to 50 potential key people or businesses that you might want to get noticed by, that align with you, potentially have the target market that you have. These could be big names in your niche, or if you are B2B, could be potential clients. And really, you only need to spend 10, 15 minutes a day, or 15 minutes every other day, commenting on their posts, soft touch engagement, like liking or sharing, just as a way that you can get yourself out there and start community building. This is a really great way that if you are looking for community growth and those kind of softer metrics for your social media, is a great tactic to help build essentially awareness of your brand. probably one of the biggest things to do when you're looking at a tactic like this is, if you're moving from soft engagement to being around commenting, do have a think about the ways that you can add value. So just going, hey, great post, is maybe not going to give you the traction that you're looking for. So offer solutions to the problems they talk about, or if you've had a similar issue, etc. It's a great way to draw connection. And my last, I suppose, kind of top tip is, yes, users are on 7.5 social media per channels. But we have to be realistic here. Again, most people who work in social media marketing, the teams are probably only 1 to 2 people. It might only be a part of your role. You don't need to be creating high quality content across every single platform that you're physically on. You have permission, I give you permission, to focus on one channel at a time. And I do this because we want good social media content on our feeds. I always say I want eye protein and not eye candy. I don't want brands putting out terrible content anymore. And I appreciate that the reason why they do that is a lot of the time it's time restriction. So let's all just focus on one channel at a time and develop the best content that we can do for our audiences on that channel. And just a side note before I hand back over to Rob, is please do remember that organic and paid social really do work hand in hand. Again, a lot of times people are looking for that quick win and sometimes only really look at paid social solutions. But one of the takeaways, again, that I hope you walk away with from this presentation is the real importance in that longer term view and how organic social can help you with that. So team the two together. And I'll hand over back to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Sam. I think we can all agree that was intriguing, interesting, a lot of food for thought, great tips, great advice. I'd rather take a moment to just delve into a little bit about Digital Ethos, who we are, what we offer as a business. So we're a team of marketing experts, digital marketing experts. As a business, we specialize in producing digital solutions. So we operate across technologies, data, and people to create a unique experience and solution to your digital problems. Now, we all know, off the back of the coronavirus and things like that, that we are in an ever more digital world, and that landscape can be a competitive one. So it's always nice to have somebody in your corner fighting the fight for you, who is willing you to succeed in every possible way. And that at DE is the team. We specialize across all areas of digital marketing, SEO, PPC, as you may have guessed, organic and paid social media, creative web development and design. If there is a digital need that you need met, we have the capabilities to help you meet and succeed and exceed your expectations. So really do, I encourage you to look at our website, take a look at our case studies, take a look at our general services and see where we can fit and find solutions for your unique problems. Just a quick overview again, this is on our growth trajectory. We've seen fantastic growth over our 5 to 6 years since we've been in operation. We operate across the globe with offices in Germany and Canada. We employ over 50 people now across all those individual specialisms. Each person is an expert in that field. They specialize in that field, so they bring with them a wealth of knowledge that can really, really help you overcome those boundaries when it comes to your business and any problems you may face in that landscape. I can see in the chat that we've been fairly quiet. So if you wanted to take this opportunity to post in a question, please do so. But while we're doing that, I will ask Sam one of my own questions. So you gave us obviously 7 tips, 7 pieces of advice there. If you had to focus on 1 or 2 of those to get started, which ones would you say would be the pivotal starting points?
Good question. So probably the first thing is pick, as I said, pick one platform, because you can't do everything. I put my camera on. Thank you. So yes, you pick one platform and focus on probably getting one content format right, whatever that you are easily able to develop kind of quickly. So if that is down and dirty reels that you can quickly mock up, focus on getting that and test and learn and build. I'm really not going to suggest here that for 2023 you need to be getting onto the metaverse and things like that. I don't necessarily think that is the case. I think what we really need to do is get the bread and butter of social media performing a lot more better for a lot more brands and businesses before we look at doing anything too fancy. But, ask me again in a year and I might be like, everyone get your headsets on. We're getting legs now, people. That's a reference.
So we have another question come through. Thank you very much. What is the importance of a personal brand on social in 2022? Does this support a business in its own growth plans? And how can you go about starting a personal brand?
Yes, definitely. So personal branding, particularly if a couple of things. So one, if you are a business and you are an emerging business, and again, you're looking to, I suppose, put signals out into the world that you are trustworthy, you're an authority, you know what you can do. Also, as well, just in general, if you are selling a service, for example, like a digital marketing agency, personal branding is incredibly effective because, again, you can put yourself forward as an authority. It's quite simple about starting a personal brand. The first thing that I would say is think about what you are going to be standing for. Again, as we've said, there's a huge amount of noise on social media. So you need to have a unique point of view and don't be afraid to have a unique point of view of what you personally believe and tailor your content around that. And again, the community outreach part is incredibly important for personal brand activity. So just soft touch, getting started, and kind of progress from there.
Thank you very much. They're coming in quicker now. Confidence is booming. It only takes one question. That's really good. It's like a snowball effect. So this one's from Jason. What is your opinion on live commerce, which emerges organic, social and e-commerce together? TikTok is a big example of that with its live broadcast in its organic feed and always selling products.
So this is an interesting one. And the reason why I say it's an interesting one, because in the latter half of this year, actually, Meta started pulling their live commerce functionality out of beta testing. But I've had personal experience in live commerce. It's some of the work that I did with John Lewis. And I would deem it very, very effective. But it has to be social first. That's probably the way to look at it. Again, there's no point having a really polished production going out because that's not going to feel native for the business. What's really good about social commerce is that it does link more of the organic side, the heavy influence and inspiration that you get with that, with a direct call to action. And TikTok, as Jason said, is a huge example of it. So I believe the hashtag TikTok made me do it has over 6 billion views. Could be million. Could be getting my M's and B's mixed up. And also TikTok as a specific platform in itself is the highest driver out of any other social media platform for impulse purchases. So it's much more higher across every possible key category in driving a much more quicker sale than your Facebooks, etc. So it's also, I would say, on what platform you decide to do your live commerce. Hopefully that answers your question, Jason.
We have another one from Emma. What do you think is the most effective way to work your paid and organic strategies alongside one another?
So that's an interesting one. And again, I probably will take it broader than that. So one of the things that, again, I always kind of fundamentally believe, and one thing I always try to work towards, is social media is incredibly powerful when it works as a part of your whole marketing strategy. So looking at what every channel is doing and aligning them all. Specifically, should I say, not an ocean. that around paid and organic is understanding that most likely your paid is going to also be driving people through to your social media feeds as a social proof and a sense check. So it's understanding that if you're going to be running a lot of paid social activity, and it is going to be a lot more at your prospecting and bottom of the funnel customers, then what are the things that your organic social media needs to be doing to help support that? So it's probably going to be a lot around building trust. So do you want to lead with a UGC type initiative on your organic social media to help support that? Or do you want to be kind of leaning a lot more into, again, reviews, etc.? So again, it's all how it kind of works in an ecosystem together, but how you can support both.
Brilliant, thank you. I hope that helped. We do have time. We have 2 more questions, and we'll try and answer those both now. So, firstly, from Rachel Thompson, she said, "Thanks for a great webinar. Thank you for joining us. What would you recommend to encourage clients who aren't keen to move away from more corporate, polished content, particularly in less fun industries?"
Yes. I appreciate we're not all Marks and Spencers here, and we don't all have a pig that we can do interesting things with. So I think one of the biggest things, well, there's 2 kind of things. It's one, more lean into the informative side of it. So whilst you might not be doing and believe me, you don't need to be doing the latest TikTok dances to have effective social media content. But again, as I kind of said, find your customers and your clients' pain points and really lean into creating content that solves that. In terms of way of corporate and polished content, I think this is also how you educate internal stakeholders. But you don't necessarily, again, having to do something with loads of effects and things on it. A really informal, someone, whoever your internal expert is, holding their phone, talking through the way that they would solve one of the challenges that your clients get, is still a social native piece of content, rather than sit in front of a desk, kind of have everything done, and God forbid in a 16:9 landscape format, everyone vertical. It is maybe a way that I would maybe pitch it. You don't need to be doing all the kind of fun stuff. You can still be creating really good social media content if it's still solving and still bringing value to your clients or your customers.
Fantastic. There is one more question, if we can answer it rather quickly before we finish up. How would you suggest is the best way for social media and SEO to work together?
Interesting one. So in a really quick way, I suppose one of the things that social does or will do is probably going to naturally drive people searching for your brand on business on Google. We have to probably be realistic that probably what's not going to happen is someone's going to see your post, remember exactly who you are and what your URL is, and type that straight into the box or necessarily click on it. So the 2 work hand in hand, because social can also be a great driver in brand search terms. Also as well, probably one of the biggest things is around video content. Video content is so incredibly powerful for SEO, and I'm not even going to try and be an SEO expert here. But what's also really what video content is really powerful for is social media, and the 2 can work really, really hand in hand. So not only way can it help improve your SEO, but also from an internal kind of perspective, you can merge or combine efforts as a way to better produce and reduce resource. I hope I've not lost too much on that.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for asking questions. If you want to type any more in the box, we'll try and collate those and answer them in follow-up emails along with that questionnaire. Just to reiterate, we will be going out with a questionnaire just to get some feedback on what you thought of the webinar and ways we can improve in the future. I just quickly want to touch on before we end that everyone who did register today is in with a chance to win a free organic social audit worth £500. It will be taken by the lovely Sam here. It will be an in-depth dive into your organic social, we'll look deeply into what you're producing, the content you're currently doing, and how it can be improved to help you reach those all-important KPIs and business goals. And last but not least, I just wanted to touch on the title for our next webinar that will be coming next month. We hope you can all, of course, join us for that. And it's touching on a subject which is still really relevant following on from the pandemic. So really exploring the challenges of remote working. You know, is it as good as everyone believes it to be? And how can it impact employees and employers? As this is a topic that's been coming up in the news a lot recently as more and more businesses are asking people to go back in. But actually, is there a way, and should we look at balancing that more often? On behalf of myself, Sam and the D team, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you gathered a lot of information from this. And as I say, we'll follow up with all the information, the slides and the questionnaire after this. Have a fantastic rest of your days. And we'll speak to you very, very soon, hopefully.